Hello, and welcome to what is not literally the final episode of Underdogs, but this is basically the final showdown. So, 4 chapters left. Big stuff happens in, well, actually, it's the next 3, but I'm really not going to say anything else because I just want you to experience it. So, yeah, for those who've followed all the way up to part 13 out of 14, thank you very much. I'm very grateful and hope this has helped you a bit during these rather strange times. And today's question is I suppose a bit of a simple one. What have you liked? What's been your favourite thing about the story so far? And that can be your favourite character, your favourite events, your favourite theme, or whatever. Just what have you liked about the story? In fact, feel free to tell me what you don't actually like as well, because still got one book that's about to be published and another 2 that are currently being written. So, yeah, any feedback is useful. As are Amazon reviews and Goodreads reviews. And hello, Julie. Hello, Debbie. I don't think there's anything else for me to say other than to leap straight into the final showdown. As always, if anyone has any comments that they want to, write here if it's live, write here if it's not live, write on YouTube if you're watching it there. Yeah, please do. And that is basically it. I should probably tell you though that, yeah, I know, I do it a lot, I'm sorry. Very quick update as to the last thing that's actually happened. The Underdogs broke out of New London's inner city prison. Lots of people died along the way. And, they decided rather defiantly, rather than just run home, we're going to destroy the clone factory. Jack and Kate are running to actually destroy the clone factory, and Ewan and Charlie are serving as bait by running to an officer's sector. And while they're distracting everyone else, they're going to at least try and do some research, not least on who Shannon is, where she came from, and so on. Hello, Kira. Okay, now I actually am going to start reading. So, off we go. Chapter 25. The comms unit was as dark as always, but somehow it felt full of life. McCormick was holding back tears of joy. It was ludicrous that Ewan, Kate, Charlie and Jack could all be alive, let alone on their way to destroying the clone factory. But it was happening nonetheless. To his side, Grace was smiling too. It was unusual for her to display positivity so openly. She normally needed permission from her peers before looking too happy. How long until Alex calls back? She asked. Not long. To his credit, Alex had acted fast for a man with a gunshot wound. McCormick had called him the moment Ewan had hung up. According to Raj, Kate had said the escape would happen at dawn, so Alex had been instructed to switch his phone on and off every 15 minutes from 4 in the morning. It had given decent communication chances without the risk of being tracked. He was running to New London at that moment, armed with no more than a telescopic handgun with 5 bullets, a bread knife that he'd need to use wrong-handed thanks to his shoulder. Hello, Kerry. And a bag of stolen supplies from the house. Very little edible food remained, but lighters and batteries are always useful. And with those supplies, he was tasked with creating an escape route for his friends. The phone rang. Gracie, with unusual enthusiasm, seized the phone first. The smartphone screen showed grass beneath Alex's boots, before he switched the camera to show his squinting face. I can barely imagine how he feels, thought McCormick, with sunlight above his eyes and soil beneath his feet for the first time in half a week. Hello? Gracie said. Gracie, said Alex, I still don't believe you. You sure it wasn't a pretty little dream? No, I heard it right from Ewan. They're on their way out. They spend 3 days in the inner city prison, find an exit that nobody else can use, and now they're frolicking towards the exit like the whole thing never happened. Try again, dear. Don't call me dear. Sorry, dear, but you have to admit, Alex, you chauvinistic bloody know-it-all, McCormick barked, leaning his face in front of the phone's camera. Stop belittling Gracie and do something useful. Where are you right now? About 10 minutes from the water place, and I still don't think it's a good idea. Can't you find them a different exit? No, and if the water treatment centre's guarded, you'll be needed there even more. It will be guarded, sir, Alex said miserably. I shot my way out through the same route. I'm the reason the odds will be against the others. It was unlike Alex to blame himself for anything. McCormick could not afford for him to wallow in misery when his position was so important, so he changed the subject. Alex, your camera's not moving around. Why are you stood still? Because of these. Alex switched the camera to the floor again. McCormick and Gracie were met with a disgusting sight of decomposed clone bodies on the grass. There was nothing recognisable left of them, just bone dust inside 3 empty uniforms. You may remember them from the chapter just before they broke in. Shannon killed these guys the night we found her. Hopefully one had the same sized clothes as me. But first, give me a second. I just need to prove that I'm right. McCormick couldn't quite see what Alex did next. He knew he was heading to the peak of the grass bank, and had laid himself to the ground. But the phone saw only sky. Yeah, whispered Alex into the phone. There were dozens of snipers on top of the Citadel walls. Their barrels are pointed at the water treatment tunnel. How can you... Telescopic hand can remember. They'll be covering the emergency exits, in case the water treatment centre troops flush them out. McCormick lay his head in his hands. To his left, Gracie's smile had vanished. What are you going to do? She asked. My father taught me a ton of lessons about fighting, Alex said. The moral of the story is don't lose, people who give up don't have souls. You've said all this before, said McCormick, hoping it would hurry him. Really? Yes, but you were bleeding out at the time. Oh, fine. Dad may have been an authoritative tyrant, but some of his lessons were useful, and right now his voice is in my head telling me what kind of fights to avoid. The water place is one of them. There's no win here. Alex picked up the phone, shuffled down the grass bank, stood up and started to walk. You're abandoning them? Gasped McCormick. Not a chance. I'm just doing this my way. McCormick gave a reserved smile. The Underdogs' self-appointed lone wolf was isolated, vastly outnumbered, and the only one in a position to come up with a workable plan. But on the plus side, that was how Alex operated best. Alex's hand entered the camera's field of vision, bent down to one of the dead clones and ripped the radio from its pocket. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got to shake the dust out of these uniforms and try them on. I'll try not to think about the little clouds of clone powder I'll be breathing in. See you soon. Stay safe, Alex. Safe? Asked Alex, in preparation for hanging up the phone. Do you want the others rescued or not? New scene coming up. Ewan knew it was just a reception, an interim room before the proper officers' sector, but he had still expected more. The computer desk and telephone on his left, even the A4 watercolour painting on the opposite wall, were quite an anticlimax. But still, that painting was the first hint of culture he had ever seen inside the Citadel walls. An unmanned reception? Asked Charlie. Looks like today's on our side. Yeah, muttered Ewan. We should invade at 4 in the morning more often. He jogged to the second security door and dialed in the same 8-digit code. Ewan and Charlie barged their way through the unlocked door and found themselves surrounded by pure magic. There was friendly wallpaper spread across the walls, and sky blue paint on the ceiling as if to imitate the outside world. There were no corridors, just rooms like a normal house. They were separated by wooden doors, the contours from their original trees still visible. The entrance room had 2 leather sofas, a widescreen television with a vast DVD and video game collection, and an electric guitar in the corner. I'm absolutely taking that guitar home, declared Charlie. Mate, keep your eyes on the door, Ewan commanded. I need to run. Maybe should watch a movie while I'm waiting. I've missed those. You'll get us killed if your attention span lets us down. Ignore the rest of the room, as awesome as it is. Ewan turned to run, as Charlie picked up the sofa by one end and turned it to face the entrance. Charlie, Ewan shouted behind him, stand near the first security door, not the second. You don't want to give away the reception area for free. Come on, Ewan, it's a good sofa. Not got time to argue, Charlie. Just do it. Ewan made a point of not looking back as he left the room. The officer's sector may have been important, but it wasn't big. It took Ewan less than 2 minutes to find the most promising room, the only office with the light switched on. The person inside had probably worked all night. Ewan burst through the door and planted 3 bullets in the man at the desk, who fell forwards without resistance. Ewan pushed his chair into the far corner, trying his best not to look at the man's name badge. He failed. The human he had killed was called Stephen Elcott. 3 humans now. The first was a takeover day screw-up. The second was to defend Ruth Rowland. This was my first kill that felt quick and emotionless. Bloody hell. The inner city must have scraped away my humanity after all. As Ewan always did with thoughts he didn't like, he pushed it to the back of his mind and pretended it didn't exist. He looked at the computer, still logged on with a wealth of humans-only information at his fingertips. His first stop was the CCTV cameras. Elcott must have been the highest-ranked man in the area, since he had video access to everywhere in the officers' sector. Ewan found Charlie sat in reception as commanded, fidgeting in the swivel chair behind the desk. Ewan bit his lip. That meant Elcott might have seen them coming and called for help. It was impossible to tell. Okay, he said to himself, switching the screen away from the cameras and navigating to the personnel database. Let's go. It didn't take long. Oh, comment. I find the fact that despite their differences, the characters work out their actions together to problem solve fascinating. Oh, thank you very much. I think it's a very trendy thing to have as much diversity as possible in any work of fiction these days, but I like it when it works not for the sake of being fashionable or woke or whatever, where you actually do have a group of characters who are naturally diverse and they work together for sincere reasons. Dana says compartmentalizing is a coping skill in combat. Yeah, it's I don't know whether or not I was aware of that. I'm well aware that it's a popular coping strategy for anxiety, and that's probably why Ewan's done it. But yeah, I can imagine it being considered a valid coping skill with any dramatic situation, not least combat. But yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It didn't take long for Ewan to find the search option. First name Shannon, last name Rose, click search. There were plenty of results, none of them useful. Some were about random people called Shannon, and others were about people with the surname Rose. Some had Rose as their first name or Shannon as their last, their names ordered wrong in the database. There were over 100 profiles, and reading through 2 per minute would take half an hour maybe. Ewan didn't have time to do the maths. Screw it, he said, and returned to the search box to try something else. First name Ewan, last name West. Click search. That did the trick. The top result was clearly him. Ewan did not have time to read, but trembled at what he saw. His school history was there. His father's military background was there. The death of his 8-year-old cousin Alfie was there. His time with Terrorist Faction 001 was also there. That obviously meant the Underdogs, because one click led him straight to everyone else's names too. A further search returned no results for any Terrorist Faction 002. Ewan felt a moment of despondent loneliness upon realising how isolated he and his friends truly were. But that feeling was such familiar territory that he was able to move on from it quickly. The list of names was identical to the one Shannon had brought to Spitfire's Rise, and a click on the Additional Notes tab confirmed what Ewan had feared. The information really had come from a reliable source. Daniel Amopoulos, his friend and former Oakenfold student, really had been the one who gave Nicholas Grant their names. Daniel had always been a headstrong guy, so the torture he must have endured before his death must have been unspeakable. Over the course of 5 minutes, Ewan spammed the printer with a long queue of demands. The Underdogs page, his own page, each of his housemates' pages, and all the while he tried to answer the three-day-old question in his mind. Why aren't we dead? Daniel was taken almost a month ago. He didn't know our location, but he knew everyone's names. He didn't know our location, but he knew everyone's names. Our old houses would be the most obvious place for Grant to check. Why didn't they send an army to McCormick's list to arrest and annihilate us? In fact, what's stopping them from doing it tomorrow? Remembering, of course, that they live in McCormick's house, and Ewan is basically the only one among them besides McCormick who knows it. There'll be plenty of time to panic back at Spitfire's Rise. In the meantime, he had the opportunity to print off some plans. The really useful ones would be classified, but Elcott probably had access to some interesting hints. With yet more documents sent to the printer, Ewan tried to think of more topics to research. By the time last time he had checked, there was still a health centre in Hartford that needed searching. A thought struck Ewan like a flash of lightning. There may have been no results for Shannon, but... First name blank, last name Lambourne. Click search. 6 results, but only one was a lieutenant. And the report about him was damning. Lieutenant Lambourne was a traitor? More than that, he was a code-writing genius. Probably explains where Better Days came from, the USB stick. And for unknown reasons, he fled New London with his girlfriend being... oh, bloody hell. Just like that, Ewan had stumbled across a link to Shannon. Without hesitation, he clicked and read. The report was completely censored, except for the essentials: name, gender, date of birth, nationality, but that information alone was enough. I guess this explains why my first search didn't work. It also explains why she killed Keith Tyler, and why she killed him mid-sentence. This lovely lady is Shannon Rose, as I think he phrased it. Ewan took a deep breath. This was bound to change things. He reached for his phone. McCormick needed to know this at the first opportunity. But before he could switch it on, Charlie's voice sounded in his radio. Ewan, problem. Ewan grabbed his radio with one hand and used the other to switch back to the CCTV cameras. Charlie was at the back of the reception, his assault rifle pointed at the closed entrance. Talk to me, Charlie. Footsteps outside. Sounds like they're dragging the bodies somewhere. Any idea how many? No, but more than one. Ewan flipped between the CCTV channels to find that, unforgivably, there were no cameras outside the officers' sector entrance. Ewan, came a faint whisper. They're using the dial pad. When he flipped back to the reception area, Charlie was next to the entrance door and shielding himself against the wall. Charlie, you know the door will open straight into you, right? Yep. Ewan checked the printer. It was almost done. By the time he ran to Charlie, helped him, then ran back, his papers would be ready. But time had already run out. The security door opened before Ewan could take his first step, and 6 clone soldiers flooded into the reception. Thankfully, each of them was facing the wrong direction. Charlie leaned out from behind the entrance door and opened fire into their backs. 4 went down straight away, and the other 2 staggered for a few more seconds before Charlie finished them off. Clever move, Ewan said into his radio. Charlie did not answer, and started to push the door closed. It wouldn't budge at first, thanks to the legs of a dead clone blocking its path. Ewan collected the centimetre-thick pile that the printer had finished during the fight. Since Kate had the rucksack, he stuffed the paper inside his combat clothes, his belt holding it against his body. Then was the moment a thought occurred to Ewan, an important one that had not yet occurred to Charlie. The attack and reception had involved 6 clone soldiers, but only humans could open doors to officers' sectors, which meant... Charlie... Ewan watched as the security door crashed into his friend's body, throwing him against the wall. Charlie could only stumble around in dizziness and pain before Oliver Roth leapt into the reception, pointed his handgun at Charlie's abdomen, and fired twice. Ewan's lungs lost all their air, and his stomach caved in, as if he had been the one Roth had shot. He found himself hopelessly rooted to the floor as the red-haired assassin grabbed Charlie's assault rifle, tore it from his grip, and smashed the butt of it into his face. They said Marshall would send his biggest weapon, Ewan thought. How could it have been anyone else? Somehow it was worse to watch the events in silence. The CCTV was video only, and Charlie's radio was silent. The shots, the yells, and the rifle smash had not made a sound, and the inability to hear them made Ewan feel even more helpless. Charlie managed to scramble to the other side of the reception desk before falling. For a reason Ewan couldn't understand, Roth did not stop him. Maybe he saw no point in worrying over a wounded, unarmed enemy with a mangled face. Instead, he marched for the second security door. For as long as Ewan had known Charlie, his ADHD-related impulses had been categorised as bad behaviour. There had only ever been the reasons behind his dreadful judgments, his behavioural problems, and everything else that made people see him as the wrong kind of person. But once in a while, his impulses served him well. Against all the screams that must have come from his nervous system, Charlie jumped to his feet, ripped the phone from its cord and threw it straight at Roth's head. While the assassin shielded himself, Charlie ran for the second security door with a desk lamp in his hand and smashed its heavy base against the dial pad until there was nothing left of it. Roth would have no access to the officers' sector and no access to Ewan. A third bullet to Charlie's side dropped him to the floor. Hi, Martin. You've joined at a rather interesting moment. Ewan threw up in his mouth, but swallowed it. Charlie fell out of shot against the wall, under the CCTV camera. Roth leant down against him. They came back into view with Charlie's radio in his hand. Ewan, I assume? Asked Oliver Roth. Ewan did not answer. I know it's you. It's your name he's screaming. Roth strolled through the room with the overconfident body language of a school bully, like the boy he must have been a year or two earlier. After moving the dead clone's leg and pushing the security door shut, he turned back to Charlie and spoke to Ewan over the radio. Let's play a game of where are the bullets? Are they buried in his muscles? Have they drilled through his intestines? Has one of them touched a kidney? Roth's taunts were touching the pressure points in Ewan's brain. Regardless, he gave no response. I take it Stephen Elcott's dead. Poor guy. His family will have to be thrown into the inner city now. Got any tips for them? Ewan broke his silence, for no reason other than anger. So Grant didn't kill you after you fell for my laser cannon trick? Nope, sorry. And nice work for the blood footprints, by the way, from yesterday. They kept me guessing for almost 10 seconds. Oh, thank you, Dana. Ross stepped backwards and looked up at the camera, tilting his helmet back so Ewan could see his whole face. Those bullets won't kill him, you know. If I wanted him dead, I'd have done it. Still, got to admire him for taking that third bullet to stop me getting to you. Now he's smashed the dial pad, it has to be you who comes to me. And why the hell would I do that? Well, partly because it's your only way out, and partly because every 60 seconds your friend gets an extra bullet. I'll see you in a minute, Ewan. Roth switched off the radio, leaned back against the reception desk and checked his watch. At the lowest part of the screen, Charlie's feet could be seen trembling. Ewan checked the ammunition in his assault rifle. He had only used 5 bullets that morning, so there were plenty left. But his infected arm remained in bad shape, so any hand-to-hand combat would not go well. Ewan bolted from Stephen Elcott's office with his rifle held high, wondering how many seconds remained before bullet number 4. He ran through the neat rooms of the officers' sector, which somehow didn't seem so beautiful anymore. Before long, he was back in the entrance hall, catching his breath between the leather sofa and the electric guitar. It was time to take on Oliver Roth single-handed, and do whatever he could to save his temper twin. Ewan turned the handle, threw the door open, and aimed his weapon around the side of the door. He saw Charlie a few metres away, bloody, wide-eyed, and taking panicked breaths. But nothing of Roth was visible, except for a hand that poked around the side of the desk, holding Charlie's assault rifle. At the sight of Ewan, it fired, spraying a flurry of bullets into Charlie's chest. Now, that's one hell of a way to end chapter 25, but yeah, I almost feel a need to apologise for that. I love Charlie as well, I really did. Honestly, I'm writing the final showdown in book number 4, and I still miss Charlie. Hi, Eve. I think I need a bit of a breath after that and another drink. So yeah, to those who really like Charlie, I think that Charlie was a fairly polarising character. Hi, Amy. There are some who absolutely adore him. There are others who just find him really annoying. I loved him despite him being so annoying. And you know what? It would be a good idea to have this much gin after that chapter. But no, it's just water to help my throat while I'm talking at length. Might have a glass of wine tonight in Charlie's memory. Anyway, something just occurred to me in that chapter which you just need to make a note of. Nice, thank you, Julie, for posting the links, and I don't blame you for fetching the wine either. Charlie was a good lad. Anyway, the thing is about that chapter, it ends, but the scene does not end, because we're now going to follow immediately after those moments into chapter 26. Here we go. Surprise, retard! Ewan took his eyes from his best friend's dead body and saw Oliver Roth jumping to his feet, his pistol in one hand and Charlie's assault rifle in the other. As Roth opened fire, Ewan ran from the entrance door, scrambled over the leather cushions, and sheltered behind the sofa. His rifle shook in his grip. There was no way he could aim accurately in his panicked state. A barrage of aggressive, echoing bangs kept him in place. Bullets punctured their way through the sofa and smashed the flat-screen television on the back wall. Ewan pressed himself into the carpet, Roth's bullet zipping inches above his body. At the sound of the first click, he threw his hands over the ruined sofa and opened fire, only to find that Roth had hidden himself behind the door. Anger forced Ewan to keep firing, uncontrollable anger just like in the old days, and he swore at the top of his voice once his chamber was empty. He had wasted the only clip he had. I fought for years to be less impulsive, he thought. Roth has brought out the worst in me. Debbie asking why I killed off Charlie. One of a couple of reasons is because it would have been... okay, the story's unrealistic enough, but the suspension of disbelief would have to go too far if all four of them get in, get out, and there aren't any casualties along the way. And unfortunately, there has to be some kind of sense of realism, and the unfortunate fact is, it is war and people die in war. Good people die in war. Very important people die in war. And also the impact it has on Ewan throughout the rest of the series, along with certain other events. In a way, it adds to Ewan's story arc, which I'm not going to give away. When Ewan inhaled, he noticed he was crying. In the background, he heard a clip of bullets sliding into Roth's handgun. Something large hit the floor, possibly Charlie's empty assault rifle. Hiding behind the sofa, mate? Seriously? This is war, not an episode of Doctor Bloody Who. Ewan heard the click-clack of the pistol's topside, followed by a high-pitched laugh. It was difficult to remember that Oliver Roth was 14, except when his voice did that. Ewan sneaked out from behind the sofa and stood at the side of the door. You've lost, mate, Roth snarled as he walked through the doorframe. Might as well come out and face... Ewan answered with the electric guitar in his grip, which he swung by its neck straight into Roth's face. The shock was enough for Roth to drop the pistol, but not enough to knock him unconscious. Another swing of the guitar struck him at the side of the neck, and Roth couldn't react before Ewan reached under his helmet, grabbed a fistful of his red hair, and dragged him inside the room. His clumsiness sent them into the sofa, which toppled backwards and threw them to the carpet. Before he could find his bearings, Ewan found himself pinned to the ground. When he looked up, Roth reached for the knife in his belt. As his hand snatched at the assassin's wrist, the podcopter wound tore itself even wider. Ewan let out a scream, but kept his grip firm. The knife inched closer anyway. Ewan noticed his assault rifle next to the sofa. He thrust out his spare arm, his fingers touching the muzzle tip and stroking it closer, millimetres at a time. Roth's twitching blade was so close to Ewan's face that two blurred knives appeared in his vision, held by two blurred hands. But his rifle had been brought close enough. It's empty, you idiot, Roth said, with the voice of a 1950s schoolteacher to a dunce student. Guns don't tend to harm people when they don't have any bullets. Ewan wrapped his fingers around the butt of the rifle, thrust it into Roth's face, and broke his nose. And that right there is possibly my favourite sentence of the whole book. Funny enough, I did see Dana's comments saying, yes, anything can be used as a weapon. And I was thinking, yeah, just wait a few seconds. Yeah, even an empty rifle can be used quite effectively when thrust into the nose of a 14-year-old assassin who absolutely had it coming. As the screaming assassin tended to the cartilage in several pieces inside his face, Ewan drew back his feet and kicked Roth into the air. Before his enemy could steady himself, Ewan leapt over the sofa, dashed into the reception, and snatched the nearest clone's assault rifle. He span around, his thirst for revenge filling the friend-shaped hole in his heart, and aimed at the rising figure with the blooded nose. Ewan West and Oliver Roth made eye contact, but it did not last long. Ewan pulled the trigger. The bullet may have travelled at hundreds of miles per hour, but he had fired too late. By the time it had left the chamber, Roth had delivered the jumping kick of his life, sailed over the sofa, and knocked the security door shut. The bullet ricocheted off the door and settled somewhere on the ground. 1 second. Ewan glanced at the destroyed dial pad, then yelled to the ceiling and sent an angry kick against the reception desk. When it didn't move, he lifted its edges and hauled it onto its side, scattering its contents across the floor. Charlie's murderer was sealed inside the officer's sector, and the duel was over. Oliver Roth would live to fight another day. Yeah, sorry about that. I appreciate how many people wanted Oliver Roth to die right there, right then, but this is a 4-part series. It can't kill Oliver Roth in part 1. Friend-shaped hole in his heart, sniff, sniff. Yeah, I like/hate that sentence as well. The trail of Charlie's blood touched the tip of Ewan's boots. Ewan looked at his friend, and wiped the mixture of tears and sweat from his face. He wouldn't be able to close Charlie's eyes like heroes did in war movies. His eyelids were already squeezed shut, his final expression stuck to his face. Ewan racked his brains for something to say, to pay his final respects to his friend and temper twin. But it would mean nothing, and he knew it. He picked up Charlie's radio from the floor. Roth had dropped it in favour of holding 2 weapons, then reached into Charlie's pocket and retrieved his mobile phone. It contained photos the survivors at home needed to see. New London's inner city, the prison that Charlie Coleman had entered and left with barely a scratch, only to wind up dead an hour after his escape. There were no words. Ewan simply turned away from his friend, opened the first security door, and fled into the depths of Floor S. I don't mean to kick people in the balls even harder, but just to remind you, that was Charlie's 16th birthday. New scene. Kate was in panic mode. She had run to the top of the stairwell, Jack following with a minigun, and they had been collapsed together on floor F when Oliver Roth's voice had come through Charlie's radio. Their friend was wounded, and Ewan had been given 60 seconds. That was the last they had heard. Well, McCormick had not taken it well. She had broken the news while phoning for instructions on using the memory stick, leaving him in no fit state to give guidance and her in no fit state to listen. Thankfully, the instructions weren't complicated. You sure there wasn't a thinner stairwell? Kate asked, pointing down the hollow chamber in the middle that allowed large objects to be transported. It'll be 10 times quicker on the way down, replied Jack between gasps. Trust me. Monster. Yeah, I've been called worse things than a monster during the course of this series. Just ask Julie. And picked up the minigun in 2 tired hands. Time to go, Kate. The others have been enough of a distraction. Kate stood up, wondering how much their friends had sacrificed to give them an undetected run to the clone factory. She opened the door and allowed Jack into the corridor first, the huge barrel of the minigun leading the way. 5 minutes passed without incident, an incredible luxury for a floor so high. Kate reached the door that she and Alex had broken through several days earlier, back in the innocent times before she had known the inner city. New London Clone Factory, Alpha Control Room, its sign read. Kate scanned her keycard over the pad, but was greeted with a red LED. Perhaps Grant had learned from his mistakes, and locked down the factory as soon as they had escaped the inner city. Out the way, Kate, said Jack. Are you going to? Yep, cover your ears. Kate stepped out of the minigun's path, and did as Jack advised. Jack squeezed the trigger and emptied the last of its ammunition into a door that couldn't possibly have been built to resist it. Through squinted eyes, Kate noticed that Jack was concentrating his fire around the edges of the lock. The strategy worked. A hand-sized chunk of door remained attached to the electromagnetic lock, but the rest of the door broke free and swung open. The sights, the sounds, and the smell of burned metal were overwhelming. Kate's brain felt like it was under attack, as if the clones inside had thrown some kind of sensory grenade into her face. No matter, she thought in an almost drunken stupor. I'm doing this anyway. Kate staggered through the door as Jack dropped the minigun behind her, which released a sudden clang on the floor that almost tipped her over the edge. She aimed her assault rifle at the surprised clones in the control room and opened fire, killing 2 of them instantly. As she tried to steady her balance, the 3rd clone shot her. Kate fell to the floor as if the bullet had killed her instantly. As far as she could tell, she was still alive, and her bloody hands crawled around her to seek out the wound, but her brain would not let her feel where it was. She was too busy dealing with a traffic jam of overwhelming sensations. This is why James never felt pain during a meltdown, she thought, why he never knew he was injuring himself. James, I left you again. I still love you, more than anyone. Before a second bullet could strike, Jack leapt in and finished off the final clone. The sound of the gunshot, loud and uncomfortable as it was, signalled the end of the sensory assault. She tried to ground herself, laying her hands on the cold floor, and focused on the air as it whistled through her throat. As she did so, a throbbing pain emerged at the right side of her waist. It's a flesh wound, Kate, said Jack as he knelt down beside her. Not deadly, just a pain in the neck. Well, a pain in your side, actually. Yep, don't worry, Kate's still alive. Then it says, the monster is a compliment. You take random letters and arrange them in patterns that mess with people's heads. What power? I love the way you phrase that. That's a really good way of putting it. Debbie says, roller coaster of a ride, these chapters. Yeah, this is... the way I handle things, I can handle times that are really good, I can handle times that are really bad, but when things are really good and really bad at the same time, that's when I kind of struggle. And that's basically what the final showdown of this book is. Well, a pain in his side, actually. Kate found the wound with her right hand. It felt like Jack was right. He certainly didn't seem panicked, as far as she could tell. Overload? He asked with an outstretched hand. Yeah. In Kate's chaotic head, it helped to know that Jack understood. Not many others would have done. She grabbed his wrist and winced as he pulled her to her feet. Kate found herself wobbling to the computer chair, where she sat down and retrieved Shannon's memory stick. Better days. I guess that's what Shannon was aiming for. She inserted it into the computer, correctly on the 3rd attempt. Jack, she mumbled, throw the kill switch. Look out the window when I do. You'll want to see this. Kate lifted her head. The view to the factory floor below was as incredible and horrifying as it had been the first time. The uncountable pipes and tubes that kept the system in order, the glowing lights of the pods, the fitness of the 2-minute-old clones that strolled out of them. There was a creaking noise behind her as Jack pulled the red lever. 1 moment later, everything stopped on the factory floor. The humming noises fell silent. The lights on the pods went out. The clones themselves, whether guards or freshly grown recruits, began to wander around the dead factory in confusion. We've not got long before they come for us, Kate. Kate nodded and opened the computer's database. The file on the memory drive was easy enough to find. betterdays.exe. Hardly imaginative, but it doesn't need to be. She ran the software that had sparked their half-week mission, expecting some kind of on-screen victory display. Instead, she got a normal and boring progress bar, which ended with a simple message. Updates installed. Please restart Clone Factory hardware. It was hardly a fanfare. It just seemed like a regular run-of-the-mill update. Then again, that must have been deliberate. Jack, it's time. She turned around to see Jack twitching in either excitement or nervousness. He took a deep breath and pushed the lever back into its original position. Before Kate could turn around, there was a dreadful metallic groan from the factory floor. She looked down and grinned. Last page. The confused clones were backing towards the emergency exit. Pipes were splitting and flooding the factory floor with different coloured liquids. Awkward whirs and rupture sounds came from inside the clone pods. Some of them tremored in place until their glass sides shattered, spreading soups of thickened slush and half-grown bodies across the floor. Electrical equipment on the ground began to short-circuit. You've got a lighter in there, right? Asked Kate, pointing to the rucksack. Waterproof matches. And we've still got the dynamite? Let me guess what you're thinking. Jack lifted his assault rifle and shattered the front window as Kate rose to her feet. Somehow, her flesh wound had stopped bothering her. She reached into the rucksack, then plucked out the matches and the small stick of dynamite. It didn't need to be big to do its job. Kate tossed the lit dynamite through the window and awaited the fireworks. They did not disappoint. The flames rippled outwards, lighting up the entire factory in a blaze of orange and blue, stretching as far as Kate's eyes could see. Pods exploded across the factory floor like popcorn in a pan. Streaks of white-hot fire lit up along the rows of burning pipes, and the sight of the flaming sea was underscored by beautiful crackles and roars. Whoa, said Jack in amazement, his fingers stimming like never before. That is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Kate grinned. Didn't you once see an ankylosaurus at the Natural History Museum? Jack laughed and corrected himself. Okay, fine. That is the second coolest thing I've ever seen. 2 chapters left. Dana says, just a flesh wound? Yeah, I'm sure there's a Monty Python reference in there somewhere. But, yeah, so a lot happened just then. Ewan has found out exactly who Shannon is, but hasn't had time to tell McCormick or anyone else, including the reader. Charlie, rest his soul, has been murdered by Oliver Roth, who, other than a broken nose, is still fit and well and locked safely away from Ewan. Kate and Jack have destroyed the clone factory, so really all they need to do now is get the hell out with the surviving people they have. So, any more answers to the question, what have you, well, assume that you have actually liked this, if you've continued to watch these live videos this far, what have you actually liked about the story, characters, things, themes, whatever. And other than that, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the actual final part of this reading. Oh yeah, I will post the links. I often forget to do that, but this is where you can find Underdogs' Facebook page. It's also where you can actually get Underdogs, whether the physical copy or audio copy or Kindle copy or whatever. And also, for those who missed it yesterday, Unbound, the publisher, have extended the deadline for the rewards for pre-ordering the sequel. Basically, if you pre-order Underdogs Tooth and Nail, otherwise known as Underdogs 2, then you get your name printed in the book or a loved one's name printed in the book. And Ju just says she's done the link, so yep, thank you very much. And yep, I've basically run out of things to say, and I think we all need to spend a bit of time recovering now. So, I'll see you tomorrow for the grand finale. Yeah, take care, thanks for listening. Bye.